Turned off. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. I thought I turned my mic on and it muted it. So again, my name is Warren Cloder, and I am the VP of Business Development for Continuum, where we are raising the standard in motor vehicle accident claims management. We are the only company in the United States that is solely focused on motor vehicle and third-party liability claims, and our results speak for themselves. It is my privilege this morning to not only be a platinum sponsor and ongoing sponsor here at the Colorado chapter, but also to be able to introduce our panelists this morning. First up, we have Dina Prince. Dina is the Senior Director of Revenue Cycle Management for Emerita Inc. And at Emerita Home Infusion. She has over 25 years experience in healthcare with 14 years leading revenue cycle in the hospital and ambulatory space. Dina is currently an officer and secretary of the Colorado chapter of HFMA. Next up, we also have Diana Garcia. Diana is the Director of Patient Financial Services for Children's Hospital Colorado. She is passionate about leadership and strives to lead with purpose and passion. Diana has over 20 years of in operational leadership roles. She is currently the Director of Patient Financial Services for Children's Hospital and is honored to be a part of that incredible place. Diana has been a WIL steering committee member for the past few years and loves linking arms with a vast and phenomenal network of women in leadership. Expanding their reach continuously ignites her. Next up, we have Taryn Nealer, who is a revenue analyst for Children's Hospital Colorado. Taryn has worked in health systems with revenue cycle for a decade and held a leadership position within the industry for the last 5 years. Taryn is proud to be part of the children's back-end revenue cycle, focused primarily on optimizing their operational and technical processes. Taryn is an active member of HFMA and has assisted with both women in leadership and marketing committees for the Colorado chapter. Next up, we have Vanessa Cavan, and who is the Director of Payer Contracting at SCL Health. Vanessa has over 18 years of experience in healthcare industry and earned her BA in kinesiology from the University of Northern Colorado. She serves on the Colorado HFMA and Women in Leadership Healthcare Committees. She has a wealth of knowledge in contracting for managed care and government entities. She was the contract payer manager for Denver Health for 6 years and is currently the Director of Payer Contracting at SCL Health. And with that, I'll turn it over to these ladies.
Good morning. Will, we would be in person today, drinking coffee, eating breakfast, gathering stories, and we sure do miss you, but right now we're virtual and in front of you. We're a little bit alone, but not. I just want to encourage you to use the chat. I don't think I really need to because it's already going. Use the emojis, pop in and say a few words, and we're going to encourage some of that as we speak today, and I want you to definitely participate. Okay, so this is all about you. It's what it would be while we were in person. We usually gather our stories and share with each other in order for everyone to know that we're not alone. All right, and growth and grace, feedback for results. Dina, did you just use growth and grace to describe feedback? Seriously. All right, I did. So what I want to start out is in the chat right away. Let's be real, what word comes to mind when you hear the word feedback, or that you're about to give feedback or receive feedback? I'd like to see some fast typing happening in the chat section. Essential, honesty, fear, yikes, negative, mentoring, make it constructive and useful, vulnerable, uh-oh, right? Yeah, those are all valuable. I love that. Thank you. When we're preparing for, it's scary, when we're preparing for any of these WIL early, morning sessions with you, we tend to go to experts first and gather some data, facts and data. Dina, it's all about facts and data. You've probably heard me say that before. So I'm going to just review a few of the things that we have dug up in our research. So this first piece of survey is, what is the biggest mistake leaders make when working with others? And this comes from a Ken Blanchard leader chat survey of 1,400 leaders. And 82% said not providing appropriate feedback was the biggest problem. Okay, and then close second at 81%, failing to listen or involve others was right there, right next to it. Well, that sounds like giving and receiving feedback to me, right? Yeah, and it's funny, this question, you know, when leaders are working with others, how many of us work with others? Yeah, like all of us. Yeah. So in the middle, you really can't see it on the screen, but I'm going to show you, I'll talk about it. It's a Gallup poll. And the question, my manager focuses on my strengths or positive characteristics. My manager focuses on my strengths or positive characteristics. And when answered, I strongly agree, 67% of those folks are also engaged. Engaged. Can some folks, you know, tell me what engaged means to you in the chat? What does it look like when an employee is engaged? Vested, present, committed, right? You might see lower turnover, proactive feedback, active listening, exactly, loyal. And on the opposite side, when they said, hey, I strongly disagree with that statement, that my manager focuses on my strengths and positive characteristics, 71% are actively disengaged. Actively disengaged. Can you describe what actively disengaged means to you? Yeah. Hey, yeah, careless, harmful. They might be spreading rumors. Yeah, they're hitting the road, Jack. Only does the bare minimum, if that. Toxic. They're spreading rumors and lies potentially. Yeah. Yeah, actively disengaged. You know, and so that says a lot about feedback and what type of feedback. And then this last chart, you can see it's split down, or a pie chart is split down the middle. The question that comes from a white paper called Feedback, the Powerful Paradox. What type of feedback had been most helpful for you in your career, right? 48% says positive feedback. And then, you know, we're looking at just, you know, the other half of the coin, negative feedback, right? Constructive feedback. You know, what is working well and what is an opportunity for improvement? In the chat, can you tell me, you know, which has been more helpful to you? Has that been positive or constructive? Honest, either way, right? Both. Yeah, you know, one thing, yeah, you try to learn for each, depends on how it's delivered, for sure. You know, and I want to talk about that, how it's delivered. You know, the ladies that I'm presenting with don't know I'm going to say this, but one type of feedback that that happens a lot is the feedback that we give to ourselves, right? And we've said that positive feedback is really great, and we need both constructive and also positive feedback. But I'm my worst critic, and I think that, you know, to share with you, one thing that I would pass along as advice is to be both, right? You're going to give yourself that constructive feedback, of course, but also give that positive, reassuring feedback. You know, what went well today? What goes well for you? And make sure that you're always, you know, bringing that into the picture and focus as well. All right. So Taryn, why don't you tell us more about feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dina. You know, as I was looking at some of these statistics, what stuck out to me was that they're great, but they don't tell us the whole story, right? So as we're looking at that, as we're looking at this last figure, positive feedback versus negative, they're two sides of the same coin. And, you know, potentially what we're not seeing is that those individuals that really appreciate that that negative feedback, it's because they work in an environment where they're getting that positive feedback on a regular basis. And Diana's going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but I think it's helpful to kind of think about how everything exists in a continuum, and that's what makes people really successful. So We are going to start by talking about receiving feedback. And we really were purposeful in placing that before we talk about giving feedback, because we often we're reading through materials, we're getting, maybe we're taking leadership lessons through our employer, and we're talking about giving feedback because it's impactful. Most of us have teams. And so that's the piece that we're focused on. But there really aren't as many materials devoted to that receiving feedback piece. And so that's where we're going to start today. But before I get into it, maybe Dina, would you be willing to share that story that you told us recently about a time when maybe you wished you'd received some feedback and you didn't?
Sure. I was I was leading a RAC committee, and of course I had some of the C's in there, compliance officer, the chief financial officer, and some, directors and VPs in the room. And there I was, giving, I don't know, even I told Tara, I'm like, I don't even remember what the actual thing I was saying wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was about a DRG that was on the RAC list. And I said it over and over again with conviction, completely wrong. Right. And I just did it, and people were nodding and writing notes, and my team is all around me, appeals and billing. And they were nodding and writing it down too. And later I caught myself in the meeting and thought, that was rough. I asked my team afterwards, how come you didn't give me feedback that I was saying that incorrectly? And the answers were, I didn't want to embarrass you. I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't want to, and, just a lesson for me, forevermore, let your team know you need the feedback, right? It's okay. I was embarrassed already. So, them politely, correcting me, folks know that I don't have all of the knowledge, or I'm making mistakes. So really correction is best. And I need someone to cover my blind spots. That's why I have a team, right? So we need to navigate together. And as we're moving forward, I can't see some of the things that are on my left or right. And I need my team for that. And so just to really reiterate to my team from that point on, and every team that I've had since, is that I really need constant feedback. And it can be right away. If not, at least give me some of that feedback after. And in that meeting, it would have been less embarrassing to just really have the feedback at the time.
Thank you, Dina. We appreciate that vulnerability. So there's a couple of different tenets that we have shared on the screen. It's pulled from a couple of different sources, but you'll kind of see that we have lots of quotes because that really kind of led the way that we decided to make some of these materials. So this first one is, between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and freedom. So thinking through that while we're talking through these practical tenets. The first, and this isn't probably news to anyone, is that as we're receiving feedback, we want to practice that active listening. We've all kind of shared it in the chat. Giving feedback is hard. Receiving it is hard, but giving it is hard. You have that anxiety. And so what we can do best by recognizing that individual's bravery for coming to us is giving them our full attention. And that looks like, putting down your phones and turning away from your screens, maybe. Being really mindful of the way that you're orienting yourself even. And I think, Diana, you have a statistic that you've shared with me a couple different times in relation to the importance of body language.
Yeah, you guys might be familiar with studies around body language, but upwards of 90% of what we see, feel, and hear is nonverbals. And so it's so important to think about your posture, your eye contact, what you're doing with your hands. Like Taryn mentioned, put your phone down and be fully present and fully engaged. And so much of that screams through our nonverbals.
Thanks, Diana. And then, just as the kind of the last piece of that practicing active feedback would be ensuring that you're summarizing, what the individual who is providing that feedback to you is saying. It can help, clarify things. Maybe you're thinking it means one thing and they actually have something else in mind. So summarize what you're hearing them say, and then it kind of can course correct if need be. That second tenet is potentially the most challenging. Don't argue, just say thanks. So, our defenses go up. Someone's giving us feedback and it hurts and it's hard. And the first thing that we probably want to do is defend ourselves, because it was probably rooted in something good. That doesn't mean that was how it was perceived, but we want to be able to share that. Maybe we have some very intense clarifying questions that really are a bit defensive. Being mindful of those things. Just because, even if the feedback isn't maybe something that is resonating with you at the time, you don't want to be labeled uncoachable. That is something that, will follow you around. It's going to spread. It's not just going to be, maybe if it's your team that's giving you that feedback, it's not just the individual that brought it to you. We all know how it works. Everybody's going to find out about it. So being mindful of how you're coming across as you're hearing and receiving that feedback. I know there's probably a few of you that are thinking, Taryn, what if it's awful feedback? Or what if this person doesn't know what they're talking about? And to that, I would say, I hear you. It's a good point. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And it doesn't change anything. You still should just be saying thank you for the same exact reasons that we just talked about. When you're receiving feedback, you shouldn't automatically reject it, but you shouldn't automatically accept it either. And that's where that evaluating it slowly comes through. I like to think about it as putting it in a lobby, letting it sit there for a while as you maybe sort through a couple of different things. Maybe you have some questions to ask yourself. This Forbes article that we found some of these ideas and actually has some really great questions that we recommend you ask yourself. Does this criticism seem true? Is this something I already knew was a limitation? As the giver of this feedback, do they have the expertise and the credibility to make this observation? And have I heard this before from other people? So thinking through it before you're automatically kind of rejecting it or throwing it out the window. I have a short story on that. I was leading a team, a front-end team at a health system. And I had to shift some breaks around. And I knew that it was going to, create some dissonance within the team. And it was just 5 minutes, but we'd opened up a new surgery center. We needed to, manage the staffing, the patient flow, but I also wanted to minimize the impact to the team. So we rolled out this, this new break structure. And I did. I had someone that came in my office and was very upset about this 5-minute transition. And I knew that it was needed for the business, it had to be done. And I knew that there was probably something that I could have done differently. So as I evaluated it slowly, I really came to this understanding that, okay, I can't do anything to change the fact that things need to move for 5 minutes, but could I have done a better job in, maybe expressing the why behind this change? Maybe I could have shared the things that needed to happen. We need to support our patients. We need to support one another. And the team would have just come up with the solution of moving the break for 5 minutes on their own, and it would have been their idea. So there's value in that feedback, even if it's just not that surface level item. So evaluate it slowly. And then lastly, be mindful. You want to develop a meta awareness around the areas that you've received feedback on. You should be looking for ways to potentially stop or start the behavior. Maybe you're going to circle back with the person that provided that feedback to you and share your progress. Maybe you're developing an action plan, which we're going to talk about next. And then it's kind of important to remember that there's always a first time that we've received a piece of feedback, and we maybe think that there isn't much validity. But if we're keeping it in the back of our head and it comes up again, we know that potentially there's a trend that we should be spending some time looking into. So another interesting statistic that we found as we were kind of creating the content for this was that the average individual is only leveraging about 25% of the value behind that feedback. And this Harvard Business Journal, or this Harvard Business Review Journal article mentioned that that's because we're really stopping that feedback cycle before it's really began. We have that conversation, we receive the feedback, maybe we intend to come back to it and spend some time evaluating it slowly. but we're all busy. We're going to the next meeting. We have someone coming in our office, and we stop it there. We're not thinking through what we should be doing with that. So there's a couple different items listed out here, and I know everyone's kind of been provided the slide deck, but a couple of those items are reflecting upon and talking through that data with a trusted partner. Developing an action plan around it, a development plan. Discuss that feedback and that action plan with the person that you received that feedback from. Revise it. Maybe they feel like that's not going to be what's best for you. Talk through that again. And then, it's great to do all of these things, but are you taking action? Are you putting that action plan into place? And then continue to evaluate yourself and repeat the process. I've kind of worked on maybe this area of the feedback, but what else can I do now? I think that I speak for a lot of individuals where I had a situation where I got some feedback about my filler word. Does anyone want to throw in the chat what their filler word is? Just me? I'm the only person that has a filler word. Okay, I hear lots of ums or okay. Thank you, Asia. Okay, so I'm going to be unique here. My filler word is obviously. And the intention is that I want to be relatable with the individuals that I'm speaking to. I don't want to assume that I'm saying something novel for the first time. But I didn't even know that I was doing it. I got that feedback from my director at the time, and she shared that with me, and it was like a light bulb had gone off. I didn't know that I was doing it. And so I sort of developed an action plan. I started with the individual's permission, if I knew them well. I would ask if I could record myself while I was speaking, and I'd go back and listen to it at later dates and time. And I was starting to see and realize the triggers for when those words are coming up. I say it when I get nervous. Maybe you've heard me say it already. Thankfully, this is at the end of my presentation, so maybe you weren't paying enough attention to hear me say it. But I'm saying it when I'm speaking with someone that maybe I'm not super familiar with. That really helped me understand those triggers. I still do it to this day a little bit, but I immediately pick up on it and can kind of pivot from there.